Hey guys, this is Renzo Network here, and welcome back to another episode of Gaming's Finest. So today we're going to be taking a look at a more obscure game. It's a game that was popular back in the day, but is not so popular nowadays. And it's a bit more kind of unique in tone and design-wise. And that, of course, is 1982's Q*bert from Gottlieb. Let's get straight on into this. Q*bert is an arcade game created by Gottlieb in 1982. The objective of the game is very simple. You control an orange-nosed creature named Q*bert across a cubed pyramid that hops around the cubes to change them into the right color. However, there are things that can stop Q*bert, like these sphere enemies, though there is one purple sphere enemy that devolves into a snake named Coily who chases Q*bert around the pyramid until he dies. However, Q*bert can stop Coily by going onto some discs that are beside the stage. When Q*bert goes onto the discs, he goes on top of the stage, and if he gets lucky, can send Coily falling to his doom. However, it's not just Coily that can stop Q*bert, there are also some other enemies in the later levels, such as two purple creatures called Ugg and Wrong Way. Two purple creatures that go onto the cube sideways, and eventually can go away by falling off of the cubes. And two green enemies, Slick and Sam, who change the cube into the color they were once made as. Each level depends on how you should change the cubes into the right colors. Like for example, level 1 has you touching the cube and it changes into the right color that you were assigned as. Though levels 2 and onwards have the cubes controlled differently. It has you touching the cube multiple times in order for it to change into the right color. And the game increases its speed and difficulty as you move on past the levels. Q*bert was very popular after it was released in the arcades. It's most infamous for its voice modules. When Q*bert dies, he swears. And that's what made him so popular, and also the game in general as well. This game spawned in toys, food, board games, and a segment in Saturday Supercade, a show that features segments of shows based on video games. Q*bert's release doesn't have a lot of good stuff going for, though I think there is some stuff to talk about. The initial concept began when artist Jeff Lee drew a pyramid of cubes inspired by M.C. Escher. Lee believed that a game could be derived from the artwork, and created an orange armless main character. The character jumped along the cubes and shot projectiles, called mucus bombs, from a tubular nose at enemies. Enemies included a blue creature, later changed purple and named Wrong Way, and an orange creature later changed green and became Sam. Lee had drawn similar characters since childhood, inspired by characters from comics, cartoons, Mad Magazine, and by artist Ed Big Daddy Roth. Q*bert's design later included a speech balloon by a string of nonsensical characters, which Lee originally presented as a joke. The Gottlieb staff had difficulty naming the game. Aside from the project name, Cubes, it was untitled for most of the development process. The staff agreed that name should be named after the main character, but disagreed on the name. Lee's title for the initial concept, Snots and Boogers, was rejected, as was a list of suggestions compiled by the company's employees. According to Davis, Vice President of Marketing Howie Rubin championed the title of what Q*bert says when he dies, specifically cussing, though censored for obvious reasons, as the title on the unit's artwork. During a meeting, Q*bert was suggested, and a staff member thought of combining cubes and Hubert into Q*bert. Art director Richard Tracy changed the name to Q*bert, and the hyphen was later changed to an asterisk. In retrospect, Davis expressed the regret for the asterisk because it prevented the name from becoming a common crossword term, and it is a wildcard character for research engines. Q*bert was then released in arcades on October 18th of 1982. Video Games reported that the game was sold directly to arcade operators at its public viewing showcase at the AMOA show, held in November 18th to the 20th, in 1982. Gottlieb offered the machines for $2,600 per unit. Cashbox magazine listed the mass market US release date as December of 1982. The game was distributed in Japan by Konami and Sega in March 1983. It was also released in Europe in March 1983. Q*bert spawned multiple ports on multiple consoles since it is a very popular arcade game, so we got a lot of work to do today. First is the Atari 2600 version of Q*bert. Now, the Atari 2600 version of Q*bert is a pretty much damn cakewalk, if I'm being honest. Because not only can you clear a stage without anything getting in your way, but most of the enemies don't follow their jobs like they do in the arcade game. Clearly just has pathetic movement, and just most of the enemies don't even appear in the game at all. So yeah, I just think a lot of work could have been done for the 2600 version, and a thing that I could give this version is that it plays very, very smooth. Now the next port we're going to take a look at is the Commodore 64 version by Parker Brothers. Now this version, unlike the 2600 version, plays like the arcade game. The enemies behave very similar to how they do in the arcade game. There's a lot more going on, and it's more difficult, which I do like that. Though I do think the controls do take some getting used to when you're playing on an emulator, though I do think this is a fairly good port of Q*bert, and that's what matters. Now the next port of Q*bert we're going to be taking a look at is the ColecoVision version, also by Parker Brothers. Now this version, unlike the Commodore 64 version, which it has downgraded graphics and not that much going for it, it's still a fairly good port of Q*bert. I do kind of like it. The next port of Q*bert we're going to be taking a look at is the NES version from Konami. Now this version is rather interesting since this one has you customize the controls, either in its arcade pattern or however you want to. I feel like that's kind of nice, though I don't know about the actual gameplay however. I feel that the controls can be pretty buggy at times, and it unfollows where the enemies are supposed to debut in the levels. Like for example, in the arcade version of Q*bert, Ugg and Ronway appear in level 1, round 3. However, in the NES version, they appear in level 1, round 2. I feel like that's kinda doesn't make sense, and it kinda makes it pretty hard for people that's just playing the NES version instead of the arcade game. So yeah, I feel like this version is kinda okay, to be honest, though I don't think it's gonna win any awards. And the final port we're gonna be taking a look at is the Game Boy Color version. Now, I feel like this version is more of Q*bert arrangement than actually adapting the Q*bert arcade game. And I do think the scrolling can be pretty bothersome since, unlike Pac-Man, where it kind of makes sense, Q*bert doesn't make sense since there are pits where I could fall into if I'm not paying attention enough. And also I think the AI in the game can be pretty cheap at times. So yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about this port of Q*bert. Q*bert is a fun game. Even though it is pretty unique, I think it still holds up to this day. And even though Q*bert does appear in Wreck-It Ralph, and also that Garbage Pixels movie, I still think his game is pretty iconic and also pretty cool. So for this game, I'm going to change the ranking a bit, and I think I'm going to make it into grades now. And I think I'm going to grade this a B+. I think this is a good game that people should play if they're curious, and also if they're interested. Now let's get on to the credits! Now here are my announcements for today. So I think the next video I'm going to be publishing is a video based on how I mapped out the entirety of Pac-Man's universe, mostly around Pac-Man's homeland, Pac-Land. I've compiled every location from Pac-Land and compiling it into one giant map. And I think it's going to be quite an interesting video for you Pac-Man fans that are watching this video. Now the second announcement is that I have officially confirmed my Scratch account, so that means I can publish Scratch games on it. Yay! I can't wait to publish some new games for you guys, like Octocluster and some stuff like that, so stay tuned on that. And the final announcement I'm going to make is that presumably after I make the Pac-Land video, I will make a video based on the 2026 Thomas Show that we'll be releasing this year. Since 2026 so far, we've been getting a ton of new information and pictures of the 2026 Thomas Show, and I find it interesting, to say the least, so I thought of maybe making a video based on that. And I think that's all. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye-bye.